Reality's Frequency. Eavesdropper Chronicles Chapter 1. The accidental awakening. Marcus had always been curious, a trait that often led him down rabbit holes of obscure information on the internet. Late one night, while scouring a conspiracy theory forum, he stumbled upon a document titled Chia's Gateway Experiment Instructions. The document detailed meditation techniques known as Focus 15 and Focus 21, which were purported to enable practitioners to achieve heightened states of consciousness and even remote viewing. Skeptical but intrigued, Marcus decided to give it a try. He followed the instructions meticulously, setting up a quiet space in his room, dimming the lights, and sitting in a comfortable position. As he began the Focus 15 meditation, he visualized himself floating above his body, looking down at himself from the ceiling. The sensation was surreal, like he was in a lucid dream. Transitioning to the Focus 21 technique, Marcus felt an even deeper sense of detachment. He imagined himself soaring above his house, then his neighborhood, seeing everything from a bird's eye view. But suddenly, the serene imagery was interrupted. He found himself looking into a room, not from above, but as if he were standing right inside it. It was his neighbor's living room, a space he had been in only once or twice before. He could see Mr. Thompson sitting on the couch, watching a late-night talk show, completely oblivious to Marcus's presence. Panicking, Marcus tried to pull himself out of the vision, but the image held him captive. He could hear the faint laughter from the TV, see the flickering light reflecting off Mr. Thompson's glasses. It was as if he had tapped directly into the feed of the CCTV camera installed in the room. Suddenly, with a jolt, Marcus was back in his own room, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. He looked around, half expecting to see Mr. Thompson staring back at him, but he was alone. The weight of what he had just experienced pressed down on him. Had he genuinely tapped into his neighbor's CCTV? Or was it just a product of his overactive imagination? Marcus tried to dismiss the experience as a fluke, a vivid dream perhaps amplified by the meditation. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. What if it wasn't just his imagination? What if he had unlocked a door to a skill he didn't know he possessed? He decided to test it again, but not tonight. Tonight, he needed rest. But as he lay in bed, the implications of his newfound ability, real or imagined, swirled in his mind. The line between reality and the unseen world had blurred, and Marcus was standing right on the edge. Chapter 2. The deep dive the following days saw Marcus in a state of fervent obsession. Every free moment was dedicated to the CIA's Gateway Experiment Instructions. He meticulously noted his experiences, the sensations, and the images he saw during each meditation session. It wasn't long before he realized that his initial experience wasn't a fluke. Each time he practiced the Focus 21 technique, he found himself tapping into different electronic signals. One evening, as he delved deep into his meditative state, he felt a pulsating energy. It was different from the calm, serene energy he was used to. Following it, he found himself looking through the lens of a Wi-Fi camera installed in a local coffee shop. He could see people ordering their drinks, chatting, and going about their day. The clarity of the vision was astounding. He could even hear the barista calling out the names for the orders. Excited by this discovery, Marcus began to experiment further. He realized that by concentrating on specific devices or even thinking about certain places, he could tap into their electromagnetic radiation. He accessed computer webcams, watching people in their most private moments. He saw students working on assignments, couples having intimate conversations, and even some darker, more private scenes that he quickly pulled away from, feeling like a voyeur. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus's abilities grew. He could now access signals from miles away. He began to unearth dark secrets and hidden truths about people he knew and strangers alike. He discovered affairs, shady business deals, and even stumbled upon a local teacher's double life. But with this newfound power came a heavy burden. The moral implications of his actions weighed on him. Was he right to invade people's privacy? Was it ethical to know their deepest secrets without their knowledge or consent? The lines between right and wrong blurred, and Marcus found himself in a moral quandary. One night, as he tapped into the webcam of a fellow student, he overheard a conversation that sent chills down his spine. Two students were discussing a plan to harm a classmate. The details were vague, but the intent was clear. Marcus was faced with a dilemma. Should he intervene and potentially expose his secret? Or should he remain a silent observer, protecting his anonymity but possibly allowing harm to come to an innocent person? Torn between his desire to master his power and the ethical implications of his actions, Marcus realized that with great power came great responsibility. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it fast. Chapter 3. The confession. Marcus had always shared everything with Thomas, from their first video game conquests to the intricacies of high school life. This secret, however, was unlike any other. After days of internal debate, Marcus decided he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. Thomas, Marcus began hesitantly one evening in his dimly lit bedroom, "There's something I need to show you." Thomas, lounging on Marcus's bed, looked up, intrigued. "What's up?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Promise you won't freak out?" Thomas chuckled. "When have I ever freaked out on you?" Without another word, Marcus closed his eyes and concentrated. Within moments, the screen of his computer lit up, displaying a live feed from the cafe down the street. The cafe's evening customers could be seen clearly, sipping their drinks and chatting. Thomas's eyes widened in disbelief. "How are you doing this?" "It's complicated," Marcus replied, shutting off the feed. "I've been practicing these meditation techniques from some old CIA document I found online. At first, I thought I was just having vivid dreams or hallucinations. But it's real, Thomas. I can tap into electromagnetic signals, view through cameras, even hear conversations." Thomas sat up straight, his face a mix of amazement and fear. "This is insane, Marcus. You're saying you can spy on anyone, anytime?" Marcus nodded. "It's not just spying. I've seen things, heard things, things I shouldn't know." The weight of the revelation hung heavily in the room. Thomas, trying to process the information, finally spoke. "This is dangerous, Marcus. What if someone finds out?" Before Marcus could respond, a voice interrupted them. "Finds out what?" Both boys jumped, turning to see Thomas's mother standing at the doorway, a tray of snacks in hand. She had a bemused expression, having caught only the tail end of their conversation. "Just some video game stuff, Mom," Thomas replied quickly, shooting Marcus a warning glance. She chuckled. "Always with these games. You boys and your wild imaginations." Setting the tray down, she added, "Just remember, it's all fantasy." After she left, the two friends exchanged a look of relief. What they didn't know was that later that night, as Thomas's mother called her brother to catch up, she'd mention the boys' wild game fantasy in passing. A seemingly innocent conversation, but one that would set a series of events into motion. For her brother, an employee of the CIA, knew all too well that sometimes fantasies weren't just fantasies. Chapter 4. The CIA's interest. Marcus had always been observant, but the sensation of being watched was new and unsettling. Every shadow seemed to move, every whisper seemed to carry his name, and every glance from a stranger felt probing. The weight of paranoia pressed down on him, making every step feel like a mile. One evening, as he sat in his room, the feeling intensified. The dim glow of his computer screen cast eerie shadows on the walls. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to tap into the one place he hadn't dared before: the CIA's signals. Closing his eyes and focusing intently, Marcus felt the familiar pull of electromagnetic radiation. He sifted through the myriad of signals, searching for anything related to the CIA. After what felt like hours, he stumbled upon a secure line. The voices were muffled at first, but as he concentrated, they became clearer. "The kid, Marcus. He's the one we've been hearing about," a gruff voice said. Another voice, more refined, responded, "Yes. My sister mentioned her son's friend displaying some unusual abilities. I thought it was just teenage exaggeration, but our surveillance confirms it." The gruff voice replied, "We can't let this get out. Imagine the chaos if others learn about this or try to replicate it. We need to bring him in, study him." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. The reality of his situation hit him like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just playing with some newfound power, he was a target. The refined voice continued, "We need to approach this delicately. If he truly can tap into any signal, he might be listening right now." Marcus's heart raced. He immediately severed the connection, his room plunging back into semi-darkness. The weight of what he'd heard pressed down on him. The CIA was after him, and they knew about his abilities. He wasn't safe. He thought of confiding in Thomas, but he didn't want to drag his friend further into this mess. Instead, he decided to lay low. He unplugged all electronic devices in his room, covered his windows with thick curtains, and decided to halt all use of his powers. If they were watching, he'd give them nothing to see. Days turned into weeks. Marcus barely left his house, and when he did, he made sure to avoid any electronic devices. He missed school, citing a prolonged illness. His parents, worried about his sudden reclusiveness, considered seeking professional help. One evening, as Marcus lay in bed, he heard a soft knock on his window. Peeking through a small gap in the curtains, he saw Thomas, looking frantic. Opening the window, Marcus whispered, "What are you doing here?" Thomas, out of breath, replied, "They came to my house, Marcus. They were asking about you. We need to do something." Marcus felt the walls closing in. The CIA was closing the net, and it was only a matter of time before they caught him. He had to make a choice: run or confront them head-on. Whatever he decided, he knew his life would never be the same again. Chapter 5. The Russian Connection. Marcus's room was dimly lit, the only source of light being the soft glow of his computer screen. He had been meticulously scanning the CIA's signals, trying to gauge their next move. But as he delved deeper, he felt a strange pull, like a current dragging him away from familiar waters. Before he could resist, he found himself immersed in a different signal, one that felt colder, more distant. The voices he heard were speaking in Russian. Marcus had taken a few online courses and could understand the basics. He strained his ears, trying to catch every word. "The American boy. He's the one with the ability," a deep voice said. Another voice, sharper, responded, "Yes, our sources confirm it. He can tap into any signal, any frequency. Imagine the possibilities if we had him on our side." The deep voice chuckled, "Or the threat if he's against us. We need to approach him before the Americans get their hands on him." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. The Russians knew about him too? He was just a teenager, and now he was caught in a tug-of-war between two of the world's most powerful entities. The sharp voice continued, "We've sent an agent to approach him. If he's receptive, good. If not, we'll have to take more persuasive measures." The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Marcus in stunned silence. He felt like a pawn on a global chessboard, vulnerable and exposed. The weight of the situation bore down on him, making it hard to breathe. He needed a plan. If both the CIA and the Russians were after him, he couldn't just lay low. He needed to find a way to protect himself, to shield his abilities. He began scouring the internet, looking for anything related to blocking electromagnetic signals. Hours turned into days as he delved into forums, scientific journals, and obscure websites. One night, as he was about to give up hope, he stumbled upon an article about a scientist who had developed a prototype helmet that could block electromagnetic radiation. The scientist claimed it could protect the wearer from harmful radiation and even block out external signals. It was a long shot, but it was the best lead Marcus had. He reached out to the scientist, explaining his situation without revealing too much. To his surprise, the scientist responded, expressing interest in helping him. They arranged to meet in a remote location, away from prying eyes. As Marcus prepared for the meeting, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed suspicious, every sound made him jump. He knew he was taking a huge risk, but he had no choice. It was his only shot at gaining some semblance of control over his life. The day of the meeting arrived. Marcus, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, made his way to the designated spot. He saw a figure waiting for him, the scientist, holding a metallic helmet. As they exchanged pleasantries, Marcus noticed a glint in the distance. Before he could react, a bullet whizzed past him, narrowly missing his head. The scientist dropped to the ground, the helmet rolling away. Marcus's heart raced as he realized he had walked into a trap. He had to act fast. Grabbing the helmet, he ran, not looking back, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind him. The game of cat and mouse had just begun. Chapter 6. The unexpected mentor. Marcus ran through the narrow alleyways, the weight of the metallic helmet in his hand slowing him down. He could hear footsteps behind him, but he dared not look back. He turned a corner and found himself in a dead end. Panic surged through him as he realized he was trapped. Suddenly, a door to his left creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. An old man with a thick white beard and piercing blue eyes beckoned him inside. Without thinking, Marcus dashed in, and the man quickly shut the door behind him. Catching his breath, Marcus looked around. The room was filled with old books, strange artifacts, and electronic equipment. The old man motioned for him to sit. "You're safe here, for now," he said in a deep, gravelly voice. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, still trying to process everything. "My name is Mr. Ivanov," the old man replied. "I've been expecting you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Expecting me?" Ivanov nodded. "I've been keeping an eye on you ever since you started tapping into the electromagnetic spectrum. You see, I was part of the original CIA experiments. They were trying to harness the power of the electromagnetic spectrum for espionage. But they didn't realize the dangers they were playing with." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "What dangers?" Ivanov sighed. "There are entities that exist within the electromagnetic spectrum, beings that feed off energy. When you tap into their realm, you become a beacon, attracting them. They can influence your thoughts, your actions. Some can even possess you." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "So, what can I do?" Ivanov looked him in the eye. "I can train you. Teach you how to control your abilities, protect yourself from these entities, and use your powers for good." Marcus hesitated. "Why would you help me?" Ivanov smiled. "Because there are others like us. And we need to stick together. The world is changing, and we are at the forefront of that change. But with great power comes great responsibility." Marcus thought about everything Ivanov had said. The weight of his abilities, the dangers, the responsibility. He took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm in. Train me." Ivanov nodded. "Good. We start tomorrow." As Marcus left Ivanov's hideout, he felt a mix of fear and excitement. He was about to embark on a journey that would change his life forever. But he was ready. With Ivanov by his side, he felt invincible. Chapter 7. The training begins. The sun had barely risen when Marcus found himself standing in the middle of a vast, open field, the cool morning air sending shivers down his spine. Ivanov stood a few feet away, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Ready?" Ivanov asked, his voice echoing in the stillness. Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was ready for. The old man had been cryptic about the day's training, only telling him to meet at this location at dawn. "First, we'll work on shielding," Ivanov began, walking over to a table set up with various electronic devices. "The key is to block unwanted signals without shutting yourself off completely. It's a delicate balance." Marcus watched as Ivanov powered on a device, and immediately, he felt a barrage of signals trying to penetrate his mind. He winced, the sensation overwhelming. "Focus," Ivanov instructed. "Imagine a barrier around your mind, a shield that only lets in what you want." Closing his eyes, Marcus visualized a shimmering wall encasing his brain, blocking out the intrusive signals. Slowly, the noise faded, replaced by a comforting silence. "Good," Ivanov praised. "Now, let's try sending a signal." Marcus looked at him in surprise. "I can do that?" Ivanov nodded. "It's more challenging, but with practice, you can transmit as well as receive. But remember, only observe. Never alter." Marcus took a deep breath and focused on a nearby tree. He tried to send a signal, visualizing a message traveling from his mind to the tree. To his astonishment, a flock of birds perched on its branches suddenly took flight. Ivanov clapped his hands in delight. Excellent. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. You must never use this ability to harm or manipulate. Marcus nodded, the weight of his new skills pressing down on him. But as the days turned into weeks, the temptation grew. He found himself using his powers for small, seemingly harmless tasks. Finding lost items, eavesdropping on conversations, even influencing people's decisions. One evening, as he sat in his room, he decided to test the limits of his abilities. Focusing on a distant city, he tried to tap into its CCTV system. To his amazement, he found himself watching live footage from a security camera, the bustling streets and towering skyscrapers clear as day. But as he delved deeper, he felt a presence, a dark, malevolent force watching him. Panicking, he tried to disconnect, but the presence grew stronger, its icy grip tightening around his mind. Suddenly, Ivanov's voice echoed in his head. Remember your training. Shield your mind. Desperate, Marcus visualized the barrier, the shimmering wall encasing his brain. Slowly, the dark presence receded, leaving him shaken and gasping for breath. He realized then the dangers of his powers, the thin line between observation and manipulation. He vowed never to cross that line again, to use his abilities only for good. But as he lay in bed that night, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, the dark presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next opportunity. Chapter 8. The signal alteration. Marcus sat in his room, the dim glow of his computer screen illuminating his face. The temptation had been growing for days, a nagging thought at the back of his mind. What if he could not just observe or send signals, but alter them? The possibilities seemed endless. He focused on a nearby traffic camera, watching the cars move in their rhythmic dance. What if he could change something minor, like the color of a car? He concentrated, visualizing a red car turning blue. To his astonishment, the car's hue shifted before his eyes. Elated by his success, Marcus decided to try something slightly more significant. He tapped into the signal of a nearby cafe's security camera. He observed a man about to propose to his girlfriend. On a whim, Marcus altered the signal, making the engagement ring disappear from the man's hand. He watched, fascinated, as the man's joy turned to panic, searching his pockets for the missing ring. The girlfriend's face fell from excitement to confusion and then to disappointment. The moment was ruined. Feeling a rush of power, Marcus continued to play with signals, altering small events here and there, enjoying the chaos he created. But he soon realized that even these minor changes had a ripple effect. The couple from the cafe broke up, leading to a series of events that affected many others. Ivanov, sensing the disturbances in the electromagnetic spectrum, quickly confronted Marcus. "What have you done?" he demanded, his face etched with concern. Marcus, realizing the gravity of his actions, confessed. "I thought I could control it, make things better. But I was wrong." Ivanov sighed deeply. "I warned you about the dangers of altering signals. You've not only affected the lives of those you've tampered with, but attracted the attention of entities far more powerful than you can imagine." As if on cue, Marcus felt a cold, ominous presence, like a shadow looming over him. He looked around, but the room was empty. Yet, the feeling persisted, a sense of being watched, hunted. "You've made yourself a target," Ivanov said gravely. These entities feed on the energy of those who misuse their powers. They'll be coming for you. Marcus felt a pang of fear. What can I do? Ivanov looked at him, his eyes filled with a mix of disappointment and concern. We need to strengthen your defenses, teach you to shield not just from signals but from these entities. But remember, every action has consequences. You'll have to face the repercussions of what you've done. Marcus nodded, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had wanted to play God, to control and alter reality. But he had learned the hard way that some things were not meant to be tampered with. As he lay in bed that night, the ominous presence still lingering, Marcus made a vow. He would make amends, fix the damage he had done, and never misuse his powers again. But deep down, he knew that the road ahead would be challenging, with dangers lurking at every turn. Chapter 9. The entities approached. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of Marcus's computer. He was trying to focus on his studies, but his mind kept drifting back to the events of the past few days. The power, the mistakes, the consequences. Just as he was about to shut down his computer, a signal pierced through, uninvited. The screen flickered, and a series of images flashed before him. Visions of grandeur, power, and control. Mansions, luxury cars, adoring crowds, all within his grasp. A voice, deep and seductive, echoed in his mind. Join me, Marcus. Embrace your true potential. All this can be yours. Marcus felt a pull, a temptation that gnawed at his very core. The power to change, to control, to dominate was intoxicating. But Ivanov's warnings echoed in his mind. These entities feed on the energy of those who misuse their powers. Shaking his head, Marcus tried to block the signal, but it persisted, growing stronger and more insistent. Why resist, Marcus? Why settle for mediocrity when you can have it all? I don't want it, Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. But even as he said it, doubt crept in. What if he could control this power? What if he could use it for good? The entity seemed to sense his hesitation. That's it, Marcus. Embrace it. Together, we can reshape the world. But with every tempting offer, there was an underlying threat. The entity's tone shifted, becoming more aggressive. You will join me, one way or another. Resistance is futile. Panicking, Marcus reached out to Ivanov, sending a desperate signal for help. Within minutes, the old man was at his side, his face etched with concern. I felt its presence, Ivanov said gravely. It's powerful, more powerful than any entity I've encountered. We need to confront it, banish it, Marcus said, determination in his voice. Ivanov nodded. But it won't be easy. This entity feeds on desire, on temptation. It will try to seduce you, to break you. You must be strong. Together, they began to prepare. Drawing on ancient rituals and symbols, they created a protective circle. As they chanted, the room grew cold, and the oppressive presence of the entity became almost tangible. It lashed out, sending waves of energy that threatened to break their defenses. But Marcus and Ivanov held firm, their combined strength pushing back against the onslaught. You cannot defeat me, the entity roared. I am eternal, omnipotent. But as the battle raged on, Marcus realized something. The entity's power came from him, from his desires, his fears, his doubts. By giving in to temptation, he had given it strength. With newfound clarity, Marcus focused on his true self, on his core beliefs and values. He remembered the mistakes he had made, the consequences of his actions, and the lessons he had learned. With every memory, every realization, the entity's grip weakened. With a final, desperate push, Marcus and Ivanov channeled their energy, banishing the entity from their realm. Exhausted, they collapsed, the weight of the battle taking its toll. But as they caught their breath, a sense of peace settled over them. "We did it," Marcus whispered, a smile spreading across his face. Ivanov nodded, pride in his eyes. "Yes, we did. But remember, Marcus, with great power comes great responsibility. You must always be vigilant, always be on guard." Marcus nodded, the lessons of the past few days etched in his mind. He had faced temptation, made mistakes, and learned from them. And while the future was uncertain, one thing was clear: he was not alone. With Ivanov by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 10. The showdown. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from a series of candles arranged in a complex pattern on the floor. In the center of the pattern sat Marcus and Ivanov, deep in meditation, their minds linked and focused on a singular goal: to trap and banish the entity once and for all. Surrounding them was an array of technological equipment, humming softly. Monitors displayed fluctuating wave patterns, and a central device, looking like a fusion of old-world tech and modern machinery, pulsed with a soft blue light. This was their secret weapon, a device Ivanov had developed over the years, designed to amplify and direct their combined electromagnetic energies. As they delved deeper into their meditative state, the room's temperature began to drop. Shadows danced on the walls, and a palpable tension filled the air. The entity was approaching. With a deafening roar, the entity made its presence known, its energy disrupting the equipment, causing sparks and short circuits. But Marcus and Ivanov remained undeterred, their focus unwavering. Drawing on their combined strength, they began to channel their energy through the device, sending out waves of electromagnetic force, attempting to ensnare the entity. The room shook, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist. The entity fought back, sending its own waves of energy, trying to break their mental link and overpower them. The battle was intense, a tug-of-war between two formidable forces. In a moment of clarity, Marcus remembered his unique ability to alter signals. With a determined look, he focused on the entity's energy signature, trying to find a weak point, a chink in its armor. And then, he found it. A slight fluctuation, a momentary lapse in the entity's defenses. Seizing the opportunity, Marcus began to alter the entity's signal, disrupting its energy flow, causing it to falter. Ivanov, sensing the shift, amplified their combined energy, pushing back against the entity with renewed vigor. The room was a cacophony of noise and energy, the very air crackling with electricity. And then, with a final, concerted push, Marcus and Ivanov managed to ensnare the entity, trapping it within the confines of the device. The room fell silent, the tension dissipating. The entity was trapped, but not without consequences. The room was in shambles, equipment destroyed, and both Marcus and Ivanov were drained, their energy spent. Ivanov, his face pale, turned to Marcus. "We did it," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Marcus nodded, exhaustion evident in his eyes. "Yes, but at what cost?" The device, now containing the entity, pulsed ominously. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The entity was trapped, but for how long? And what other consequences would arise from their actions? As they sat amidst the wreckage, contemplating their next move, one thing was clear: their journey was far from over. The showdown had been intense, but it was only the beginning. Chapter 11. The aftermath. The room was still, the remnants of their battle scattered everywhere. Burnt-out equipment, shattered glass, and the lingering scent of ozone filled the air. Marcus, his body slumped and his breathing shallow, tried to rise but found his strength waning. Ivanov, looking equally worn, extended a hand to help him up. "That took more out of us than I expected," he murmured, his voice filled with concern. Marcus nodded, his face pale. "I've never felt this drained before. It's like the entity sucked the life out of me." Ivanov sighed, his gaze distant. "It's not over, Marcus. The entity will return, and it will be stronger. We may have trapped it temporarily, but it will find a way out. It always does." Marcus looked at the device, the soft blue light now replaced with a dark, pulsating red. "What do we do now?" "We prepare," Ivanov replied. "We need to find others like us, those who can tap into the electromagnetic spectrum. Together, we might stand a chance." Marcus pondered this for a moment, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "I want to use my powers for good, Ivanov. There's so much potential, so much we can do to help people." Ivanov smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. "That's a noble thought, Marcus. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. And there are those who will want to use your abilities for their own gain." As if on cue, a soft beep emanated from a still-functioning monitor. A red dot blinked on the screen, moving steadily towards their location. "They've found us," Ivanov whispered, his face grim. Marcus's heart raced. "The CIA? The Russians?" "Both," Ivanov replied. "They've been tracking us, waiting for the right moment. And after our battle with the entity, we're vulnerable." Marcus felt a surge of panic. "We need to leave, now." Ivanov nodded, gathering a few essential items. "We'll go to my safe house. It's shielded, hidden. They won't find us there." As they made their way out of the ruined room, Marcus couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and determination. The battle with the entity was just the beginning. A larger war loomed on the horizon, one that would test his limits and challenge his beliefs. But he wasn't alone. With Ivanov by his side and the potential to gather others like them, there was hope. And as they disappeared into the night, evading their pursuers, Marcus made a silent vow to himself. He would use his powers for good, to help and protect, no matter the cost. Chapter 12. The gathering. The journey took them across states, through small towns and bustling cities. Marcus and Ivanov, following leads and whispers, were on a mission to find others like them. Each day was a blend of hope and uncertainty, but the duo remained undeterred. In a quiet cafe in Oregon, they met Lila, a young woman with the ability to intercept radio frequencies. She could hear conversations from miles away, tuning into different channels as one would with a radio. Initially hesitant, Lila soon realized the gravity of the situation and joined their cause. Further south, in a tech hub in California, they encountered Raj, a prodigious hacker who could manipulate digital signals, causing disruptions and even erasing digital footprints. His skills were invaluable, especially with the CIA and Russians hot on their trail. As they traveled east, they stumbled upon Elena in a remote part of Nevada. She had the unique ability to visualize electromagnetic waves, seeing them as vibrant colors. This allowed her to detect anomalies and even predict certain signal-based events. Together, this group of unique individuals formed a formidable team. They rented a secluded farmhouse in the Midwest, turning it into their base of operations. The open fields around them acted as a natural buffer, making it difficult for any unwanted signals to penetrate. Days turned into nights as they trained together. Lila taught them how to fine-tune their hearing, Raj shared techniques to safeguard their digital presence, and Elena helped them visualize and navigate the complex web of electromagnetic waves around them. Ivanov, with his wealth of experience, acted as the mentor, guiding them, ensuring they were always one step ahead. Marcus, amidst this newfound family, felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. The weight of his powers, which once felt like a curse, now seemed like a gift. He trained harder, pushing his limits, and soon discovered he could not only tap into signals but also amplify them, a skill that could prove crucial in their upcoming battles. Late one evening, as they sat around a campfire, sharing stories and experiences, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on his journey. From a confused teenager stumbling upon the CIA's Gateway experiment to the leader of a group of gifted individuals, his life had taken a turn he could never have imagined. Ivanov, sensing Marcus's introspection, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've come a long way, Marcus. And remember, this is just the beginning. With our combined strengths, we can stand against any threat, be it entities or government agencies." Marcus nodded, his determination renewed. "We're in this together. And we'll face whatever comes our way, as a team." The night deepened, but the glow from the campfire and the bond they shared kept the darkness at bay. They were no longer alone in their struggles. Together, they were stronger, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 13. The global network. The farmhouse, once a quiet and secluded place, buzzed with activity. Computers, monitors, and intricate devices filled every available space. The team had transformed it into a state-of-the-art monitoring center, capable of tracking electromagnetic signals from every corner of the globe. Lila and Raj, with their combined expertise, had set up a global network that tapped into various signal sources. Satellites, radio towers, and even deep-sea cables were all within their reach. This network acted as their eyes and ears, alerting them to any unusual activity or potential threats. Members from different parts of the world joined their cause, each bringing their unique abilities to the table. From Australia to Africa, from Europe to Asia, the network grew, strengthening their collective reach. They called it the Nexus. Marcus, having grown immensely both in power and stature, naturally assumed the role of a leader. He coordinated efforts, ensured smooth communication between members, and mentored newcomers. His calm demeanor and strategic mind made him the perfect candidate to guide the Nexus. One evening, as the sun set, casting a golden hue over the fields, an alarm blared through the farmhouse. The monitors flashed red, indicating a massive surge in electromagnetic activity. Raj, with his fingers dancing over the keyboard, traced the source. "It's unlike anything we've seen before," he murmured, his face pale. Elena, visualizing the waves, saw a dark, ominous color, signifying a powerful and malevolent entity. "It's vast," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And it's heading our way." The Nexus members across the globe reported similar findings. This entity wasn't just a local threat, it was global. And it was powerful. Marcus convened an emergency meeting. The farmhouse's living room, now their war room, was filled with members, each discussing potential strategies and sharing information. "We've faced entities before," Marcus began, "but nothing of this magnitude. This is a collective threat, and we need a collective response." Plans were quickly drawn up. Defensive measures were put in place, with members skilled in shielding and protection working overtime. Offensive strategies were also discussed, with Marcus emphasizing the importance of not underestimating their adversary. Ivanov, with his years of experience, suggested a two-pronged approach. "We need to weaken it first, disrupt its signal, and then, when it's vulnerable, strike with everything we've got." The group agreed. Teams were formed, each with a specific task. Some were to focus on defense, shielding key areas and members. Others were to engage the entity, using their abilities to disrupt and weaken it. As preparations were underway, Marcus took a moment to address the Nexus. "We've come a long way," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "From individuals struggling with our abilities to a global network standing against a common threat. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every person, every memory, every reality. Together, we are strong. And together, we will prevail." The mood was somber but determined. The Nexus, united in purpose, braced themselves for the ultimate battle. The fate of realities, memories, and perhaps even the world, hung in the balance. Chapter 14. The final confrontation. The sky darkened as the entity approached, its presence casting a shadow over the world. The Nexus, stationed at their farmhouse base, felt the weight of its power. It was like a storm, vast and unyielding, threatening to consume everything in its path. As the entity drew closer, its influence became evident. Whispers of doubt and mistrust began to circulate among the group. Elena, usually calm and composed, lashed out at Raj, accusing him of sabotage. Lila, in turn, grew suspicious of Marcus, questioning his leadership and decisions. The entity was not just attacking them physically, it was trying to tear them apart from within. Marcus, sensing the growing discord, called for a meeting. "This is exactly what it wants," he declared, his voice firm. "To divide us, to weaken us. We cannot let it succeed." But the entity's influence was potent. Old grudges resurfaced, and arguments broke out. It seemed as if the Nexus was on the brink of collapse. In a desperate move, Marcus decided to tap into every signal globally. Using the vast network they had established, he reached out, connecting with every consciousness, every mind, every soul. It was a risky move, one that would drain him immensely, but it was their only hope. As Marcus channeled the collective consciousness of the world, a wave of energy surged through the Nexus. They felt connected, united in purpose and intent. The whispers of doubt faded, replaced by a chorus of determination and resolve. With the combined strength of billions, they confronted the entity. It was a battle of wills, a clash of energies. The farmhouse became the epicenter of this cosmic struggle, with waves of electromagnetic force radiating outwards. The entity, for all its power, was taken aback. It tried to fight, to corrupt, to divide, but the Nexus, bolstered by the collective will of humanity, stood firm. They channeled their energy, focusing on the entity, trying to trap and contain it. After what felt like an eternity, there was a blinding flash of light. When it subsided, the entity was gone, trapped in a containment field of their creation. The world was safe, at least for now. But the threat remained. The entity, though contained, was not destroyed. It lurked in the shadows, waiting for a chance to break free. Exhausted but triumphant, the Nexus gathered in the farmhouse's living room. They had faced the greatest threat imaginable and had emerged victorious. But the battle had taken its toll. Marcus, drained from channeling the global consciousness, collapsed, his body weak and frail. Ivanov, with tears in his eyes, approached Marcus. "You did it, lad," he whispered, holding Marcus's hand. "You saved us all." Marcus, with a faint smile, replied, "We did it, together." The story of the Nexus, of their battle against the entity, spread far and wide. They became legends, heroes who had stood against the darkness and had prevailed. But in the shadows, the entity waited, plotting its return. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. Chapter 15. The new beginning. The aftermath of the battle left a changed world. People were more aware, more connected, and the tales of the Nexus's heroics had spread far and wide. But Marcus knew that resting on their laurels was not an option. The entity's containment was a temporary solution, and there were likely more threats lurking in the vast expanse of the electromagnetic spectrum. With Ivanov's encouragement, Marcus decided to set up a school, a haven where individuals with unique abilities could be trained, nurtured, and prepared. He wanted to ensure that the world had a line of defense, a group of skilled individuals ready to face any threat that might emerge. They found a secluded piece of land, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, surrounded by dense woods and serene lakes. It was the perfect location for the school, which Marcus named the Nexus Academy. The academy was designed to be a place of learning and growth. Students were taught not just about their abilities but also about the responsibilities that came with them. They were trained in combat, strategy, and the art of tapping into the electromagnetic spectrum. As the academy grew, so did its reputation. Young individuals from all over the world sought admission, eager to harness their powers and be part of the legacy of the Nexus. Ivanov, having seen the academy flourish under Marcus's leadership, decided it was time for him to step back. He had been a mentor, a guide, and a father figure to Marcus. But he felt that his time had come. "The world is in good hands," he whispered to Marcus as they stood on the academy's balcony, overlooking the sprawling campus. With a heavy heart and tears in his eyes, Ivanov retired, leaving Marcus in charge. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The Nexus Academy became a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience and determination. Marcus, though busy, often found moments of solitude, reflecting on his journey and the path ahead. One day, as Marcus was reviewing some applications, a particular file caught his eye. It was an application from a young girl named Lila, who claimed to have the ability to communicate with entities from other dimensions. Intrigued, Marcus decided to meet her. Lila, with her fiery red hair and piercing green eyes, had an aura of mystery around her. She spoke of visions, of alternate realities, and of a looming threat that was far greater than anything they had faced. Marcus, though skeptical, saw potential in her and decided to admit her to the academy. As Lila walked through the academy's gates, she looked back, her eyes meeting Marcus's. There was a silent understanding, a mutual respect. The electromagnetic spectrum, with its endless possibilities, remained a vast uncharted territory. And as the sun set, casting a golden hue over the academy, the story hinted at new adventures, new challenges, and the promise of a sequel. If you have enjoyed our paranormal remote viewing, CCTV snooping, gateway experiment electromagnetic radiation manipulating, get no sleep tonight, scary stories, please visit us at Paranormal Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to connect us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professional team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal Untold Stories.